Hello, people! Humans, animals, ghosts, spirits, and zombies all tuned in to learn how to play StarCraft from beyond the grave. Welcome to Day 9 Daily number 569, where we learn to be a better gamer. In today's Protoss vs. Protoss Daily, we're going to be looking at two games between the Romanian Protoss Nightend and the South African Protoss PandaTank. Ooh. In these games, in the first one, we're going to be looking at a sort of cool, modern twist on the usual 4-gate, where we're actually going to be using the 4-gate to get into a good position and play out a long game without Colossus. What? Seems impossible. Totally possible in this. And then in game number two, we're not going to be looking so much at the broad strategy concept that we'll be looking at in game number one, but instead, we're going to try to answer that real pain-in-the-ass question. What happens when we're both going Colossus, Archon, Zealot, and I fall behind on the Colossus count and then I just lose? What do I do? We're going to be looking at a lot of cool late game tactics where everyone's got all the upgrades and units that they want, and how do you end up getting the edge? We're going to look at it. And that's it. Tomorrow's daily will be how to win ultra late game in Zerg vs. Protoss, provided by Root Cats, as we clear my brain out. Afterwards will be the After Hours Gaming League semifinal number 2 to find out who will be facing Amazon in the grand finals. And then Thursday will be a normal daily. Friday I'll be playing 2v2v2v2s and mono battles with you wonderful folks for 7 hours all day. I'm in the mood to play some ridiculous, insane games, so why don't we do that? And then next week's Fun Day Monday, play a 4v4 where only one of you may make units. All that info is on day9.tv. Let's talk about PvP by going straight into the game. The fastest, most efficient intro of all time. I don't want to step too much into theory. I don't want to do too much pausing, discussing hypotheticals. For instance, we are going to see, we have PandaTank from CM Storm up on the top. We have Fnatic's Nightend over here. Nightend is going to be going for a 4-gate. PandaTank is going to wind up going for Robo. In particular, is going to wind up not going for Stargate. And I'm not going to talk too much about the Stargate mode. Going to be focusing a little bit more on what is happening and the immediate intuitive responses that we're going to be seeing. So this map is the good old. Is this Core Hall City or Newkirk City? There's two famous lore place city spots. I'm pretty sure this is Core Hall City. Thank you. This is Core Hall City. Core Hall City, rocking out. Core Hall City has weird formations. Notably, we have an encased expansion, not a particularly huge ramp. Kind of tricky to hold third, and another kind of far away, tricky to hold from air third. Very wide open. Super open in the middle. So given this ramp is pretty small when compared to, other maps' ramps. But in terms of actually I'm saying that wrong. Most maps have a pretty wide ramp outside your second base. For a 2-basing size, this is actually pretty small. However, because it's also our entrance to our main, this is a considerably larger ramp than other maps for the 1-base consideration. So in other words, it's a pain in the ass to hold off early game and not so bad to hold off once we have 2 bases. There, that was a clean way to say it. I don't know why it took me so long to say it. I figure I may as well be as obtuse as possible before I come around to just giving you a 1-sentence, small set of words descriptor. It has never been within my interest to be terse. So yes, difficult to hold rushes, not difficult to hold pushes when you have enough units. So we're going to be spending most of the time looking at our good friend Nightend's base. Delicious coffee. And occasionally we'll pop up here to PandaTank. Now, if we just consider the good old history of StarCraft 2 and we ask ourselves the question, why did people stop going for the 4-gate? The answer is simple. It was too difficult to do warp-ins up the ramp. And now in Heart of the Swarm, we can't do warp-ins up the ramp. A pylon here does not actually provide a power radius up to that top side. So people just essentially halted doing it. However, what we're going to see is that given this is so wide, and given that this is somewhat of a flat angle where we can actually hit this geyser from below, getting a lot of stalkers is not a bad tactic at all because we have a mothership core. So first we see that our good friend Nightend, and I will go to the Nightend camp. Let me just pause for a moment and just note that PandaTank and Nightend are jerks because they're choosing green and purple, which are like impossible to see on minimaps. If only it was restricted to fluorescent colors, maybe pastels. Ugh. Coffee. Now, what we're seeing Nightend do is one of the most standard frameworks of an opening. You skip the Zealot, you get the second gateway, and the goal is to get 3 stalkers early on to deal with any sort of probes that are trying to build pylons and that sort of thing. Because we put 3 in each gas geyser quite quickly, we actually have enough gas to get a mothership core. We're a little bit low on the minerals, but that's okay. That's okay. There's our 3 stalkers coming out. Cool. We see the kind of non-stop chrono boost. First stalker is actually heading way down here to check this base. The other 2 we'll see begin doing some monitoring of other locations that pylons could be going down in as well. So this is some kind of funky timing on this third gateway. This third gateway is actually late in terms of aggression. It takes about a minute to build a gateway, and it's going to be way less than a minute by the time our warp gate research is done. Every chrono boost has actually been going straight into this warp gate research. So what gives? It seems not to make sense. This will be able to help us defend against possible 4 gates, especially thanks to the mothership core defensive unit coming out right now. But also, this formation is going to allow us not to get aggressive super quickly. Not to allow us to get aggressive at, say, 6 minutes or 5:45. It'll allow for us to do some follow-up aggression. So, given this formation, we already have a pretty damn good sense that our opponent also went for a 2-gate play. Here's our warp gate finishing on up. PandaTank has a probe there that's going to tease the notion of building a pylon, but none of that. None of that's really going to be too effective. Sure, there's some forward pylons here, but again, this third gateway is going to allow for some later on aggression, but some defense in the right now. And I think it's pretty reasonable to say that a 4-gate is also a very good defensive build. It's really hard to defeat anyone who has 4 gates up. But I will emphasize that Nightend is doing this blind. There's no vision that he's seeing where he's trying to exploit anything specific. And in fact, Chrono Boost goes back to the probes. Most 4 gates halt at 20 probes. He's gone up to 26, still producing, still adding on a good chunk of stalkers back in the main base. Has a probe here, but this probe is not going to be geared up to be doing some aggression. Or when I say aggression, I mean like trying to, get pylons all the way up here. So here's a typical position we end up in a PvP. We have a big aggressive army. Now what? Our opponent could be doing any number of things. He could be going for Stargate. He could be going for Robo. Could be going for some 3-gate pressure. What we do know is that as we begin shoving all the way up in here, it's difficult for him to do anything cute like go for a Stargate play because this entrance is so wide open. It's difficult for him to be doing anything that's really thin defense or sentry defense focused. He kind of has to go for something like strong gateway defense with Blink or for an Immortal. So Nightend can actually begin doing this really, really, really ridiculously aggressive pushing. Obviously, in a lot of circumstances, we win. But we don't care too much about those because I think everyone here has seen 4 gates that win. Just trying to get some economic exchanges, where the units lost for PandaTank are a little high. But in particular, killing off a couple key things like that mothership core. Forcing things like this additional Immortal to pop out. Picking off this Cybernetics core. These are all really nice ways to impose delays on our opponent. But the thing is, this is where I actually will pause. Ta-da, it's my face. If you're thinking about a long-term strategy, the simplest way to process a long-term strategy is saying, what is he forced to do? And how does my long-term strategy exploit that? So, sure, it's nice for me to say, oh, well, he killed off the cybernetics core. Oh, that's good. He got the mothership core. Oh, that's good. But that's not useful, right? That doesn't help us think about our long-term plan. So we will say, though, is, okay, mothership core has been killed off. This means that he now can no longer really apply pressure to us. He can't do any sort of recall to get back home. And also is a little bit shakier defensively. So he's likely forced to go immortals. We have a lot of stalkers. We have more gateways. He doesn't have a lot of stalkers. He has fewer gateways. He's forced to go for that Robotech. Okay, great. Forced to go for Robotech. Forced to likely be kind of defensive. And now let's see the continuation that comes out of Nightend that I luffed. I L-U-F-F-E-D'd it. I luffed it. In the main base, right away, straight up getting this mothership core. Cool. Now, in terms of Wings of Liberty, standard follow-through, get Blink, because we already have a hell of a lot of stalkers, and we have a little bit of an excessive gas. Let's get the Blink up. Yeah! However, Nightend is going to do something really, really suave. This is usual, good harassment. All Protoss players will do a little bit of this, and that's, you know, annoying. Go be free, little probe. Nightend's actually going to go for DTs, which is not actually a desperation play. And he's going to be throwing down an expansion down hither. So these sorts of pushes that we're seeing, these sorts of pushes from PandaTank are really difficult to just roll with. Why? Because our opponent has a hell of a lot more stalkers, a hell of a lot more gateways. And I almost don't want to say this, but I will. Our opponent can also have Blink, and we're just going to get mauled if we have a tiny army. What Nightend has almost guaranteed is that PandaTank is going to be in defensive posturing. Super defensive mode, likely taking an expansion, but at the very least, in a defensive positioning. We will have map control. We can place these forward pylons. We can go for this Dark Shrine, and this expansion actually does not have that much contestment to it. Although this does seem weird, why not just expand here? The answer is that there's some follow-up pushes, there's some one-base Colossus pushes that will just, you know, romp right up here and kill us. And if we have this expansion right here, we can continue to kite with our stalkers. Also, by taking this in a position where we can, we still have this as a really comfortable third base. So here's the Blink. This Blink and this is to deal with any sort of Colossus follow-up push. But this does seem a touch weird, this Dark Templar. This is the slight weird thing that might seem a little bit off. The DTs mean... did he actually make DTs? Did he actually make some? I feel like he did. I might have been hallucinating. No, I guess he didn't. I guess he just did not even morph one in. The DTs serve a couple of purposes. We're not seeing them come out, but I've played a whole bunch of PvPs with exactly this kind of transition to be able to comment on it. There's a big Colossus one-base push that could be trundling out. What do DTs do? The DTs are... the DTs provide a really easy counterattack against this sort of push, and then our Blink Stalkers can help us stay alive. So that's one really simple one. The second one is that if he's really defensive and light on units, kind of relying more on sentries, the DTs can form into an archon, and then we can just bounce right up there and kill him. So there's some kill sequences the DTs provide. But again, long term, we want to think about the long term. DTs are going to force him to make more observers, which cuts down on his future Colossus count, because he's building Immortals, and now he's building Observers. Geez, he's not getting any Colossus, right? He's spending all his time on Colossus. And also, it's going to continue to make him more defensive. Cool. Great. Once again, I will note, because I saw this in the chat, this you should not think of as a hidden expansion. This is not valuable because it's hidden. It's valuable because it is on the opposite side of the map. It's like a Mutalisk Zergling player building his bases on the other side. It works because the Ling Muta are fast. This hidden expansion works because there's a strong possibility of Blink coming up. And we can easily control the map and manipulate his army positioning because there's no one target. If the expansion was here, it would be like one straight up target. So here we have the DTs that come up, a little slow. Cannon coming up in case he goes DTs back at us. We still haven't seen anything, so great. He's not going one base Colossus push. He's probably expanding and doing some other jazz. We could step forward with our Mothership core, but it looks like he's staying back for defense. And there was the probe that moved on up. PandaTank, I think, is playing out very smartly. He's just creating a building wall in case of some attempted Zealot Archon bust. But here we see Nightend getting all his additional gateways. He won't quite be building out of them nonstop. Blink got canceled. Going for Zealot Archon, great. All the tools that we have put together are likely to eat into our opponent's ability to focus on Colossus production. PandaTank is unlikely to have a lot of Colossus, which is the thing that will give this army a lot of headaches. And, you know, let's just speed this game up. I think that broad strategy consideration is the big one I wanted to focus on. Idle gateways, so that way we can get and expand. This is the one tricky part of analysis. If he is going Colossus, we really do want this extra expand up because we want to be able to overwhelm his 2-base Colossus play with 3-base gateway units. If he is not going Colossus, we want to make sure we have these 7 gateways available to begin churning out a butt-ton of units. Because it is impossible for him to be focusing a lot on Colossus production while still getting a lot of units. So those are the two mutually exclusive thingies. But in essence, if I had to sum up this game, the 4-gate Stalker pressure guaranteed a defensive production of Immortals. This base and the DT follow-up further guaranteed defensive positioning from PandaTank, as well as reduced Colossus count. And these little engagements are further confirming for Nightend that PandaTank has a low Colossus count. So great. We're actually seeing Nightend comfortably sit here, morph in tons of Zealots, even have defense against DTs. Well, not entirely, not down here. And has just locked his opponent out of these additional bases. Nifty. Nifty, thrifty-tastic. Here's where some DTs are actually arriving here. If I go to the everyone cam, be sure to build a cannon. And great. Not too complicated to play. What I do like is that Nightend is kind of being a little bit conservative with the Zealots for 2 reasons. One, hiding them has some benefit. But the more important thing is that Zealots have a move speed of 2.75, which is still slightly slower than the move speed of Stalkers, 2.95. So we don't want our big Zealot army taking a ton of damage if we're retreating in the middle. These other units are quite a bit faster. Well, I don't want to say quite a bit. They're enough faster that it's okay. So then the big swarm in of Zealots. No Colossi in this army. Why? Because we manipulated him in the early game, and now he's trapped. And he's full of tears as well as death. Ah, 2 things I cannot handle. And then a very simple counterattack. This base could have stayed alive had there been a single photon cannon, maybe 2. But either way, we have 2/2 ground units, nearly. And we certainly are going to have more Zealot Archon, because we began that transition earlier. And perfect. Easy peasy. It's just a nice tactic that I liked a lot. One of the reasons why I like these kinds of tactics in PvP is that very often... actually, what a perfect segue. Very often in the Protoss versus Protoss matchup, there's no... I'm trying to think of a word to use other than imbalance. Do I have this book? I do. I do. Ah. This is a great book. This is a really good book. It's called The Amateur's Mind. I even have some pages bookmarked with, it looks like napkins. Amateur's Mind, a fantastic book. Definitely recommend you get it, by Jerry Silman. Even if you don't really play chess, please, I encourage you to read it. It's a fantastic read. He talks about this concept of just, I don't want to use the term imbalance. That's the term he uses in the book, and for us emotionally loaded internet users, if things are imbalanced, they must be nerfed. But it's the idea of inequality. In the chess book, he talks about if you have 2 bishops and your opponent has 2 knights, those pieces move differently, so there's this inequality. In the non-mirror matchups in StarCraft, there's that inequality of, like, I am Zerg, so I have Zerglings and Mutilas. I have fast units. You as Protoss do not have units as fast as I do. There's where an inequality lies. But in a matchup like PvP, often there is no inequality to abuse. With this build order, it's really fun, because very rarely will your opponent be mirroring you and doing the same thing. So it's sort of much easier to see where your edge lies. We saw PandaTank going Robo. We saw Fnatic Nightend going for Twilight Council tech. It's much slower, stronger versus much faster, mobile. We see this sort of cool inequality there. So a lot of people struggle when it's a dead equal situation. And that's the game we'll look at part 2 and 3. A game where PandaTank and Fnatic's Nightend play a really close game where they actually do the same opening, transition to the mid game in almost the same way, but it's tactical differences that allow one player to begin pulling an edge over the other. Wasn't intending to go on this tangent, but still, get The Amateur's Mind. It's a really good book. Get this book! I'll see you in 2 minutes for part 2.